The year 1997, April 17th. Deep within the violent waters of the Indian Ocean, a massive wooden ship struggled against the fury of nature as it sailed toward the island known as Mombasa. The sea was merciless that night. Gigantic waves crashed against the sides of the ship like monsters trying to drag it beneath the ocean. Rain poured endlessly from the heavens, while thunder roared across the skies. Lightning split the darkness every few seconds, briefly revealing the terrifying face of the storm. Inside the ship were 6 men. 5 of them were young men, between the ages of 30 and 35. They were looking like South Indians. Fear had completely taken over them as the ocean became more violent with every passing minute. But the 6th man, he was different. An old man around 70 years of age stood calmly near the edge of the ship, as if the storm itself bowed before him. He wore a white turban and long white robes that danced in the wind. His thick white beard flowed across his chest, and his deep eyes carried the wisdom of someone who had seen things ordinary men could never understand. His name was Veer. Suddenly, Virji stretched out his hand and pointed toward the far right side of the ocean. "Turn the ship there!" he shouted. The young men obeyed immediately. One of them, who was controlling the wooden circular steer wheel, turned it right. Then, with excitement burning in his eyes and a fearless smile across his face, Virji raised both hands toward the storm and cried out loudly, "He will be born tonight! He will finally be born tonight!" The 5 young men looked at each other in confusion. Who was going to be born? What kind of child could make a man celebrate in the middle of a deadly storm? But none of them dared to question Virji any further. Hours later, the ship finally arrived on the shores of Mombasa Island. The 6 men stepped onto the wet sand and began walking along the lonely beach. Virji led the way, while the 5 young men followed behind him silently. The wind howled around them. Their feet sank into the heavy sand as they moved forward through the darkness. Then, suddenly, footsteps. Not 1 or 2. It sounded like the footsteps of nearly 20 people walking beside them. The young men froze in fear. But when they turned around, nobody was there. Their breathing became heavy. Virji suddenly burst into laughter. He raised his arms toward the invisible darkness surrounding them and shouted joyfully, "We are not the only ones who have come to welcome him into this world. Others have come too, unseen witnesses, to watch the birth of the one who is destined to arrive tonight." A cold chill ran down the young men's spines. Still, they gathered their courage and continued following Virji deeper inland. With the greenish beings behind them, the young men felt like they were nothing but just cartoons. Their destination? A small village known as Jomvu. At that very same moment, inside a tiny house in the village of Jomvu, another old man was praying. His name was Kasim Papa. He was nearly 100 years old. Long white hair rested near his ears, prayer beads hung across his chest, and a wooden walking stick leaned beside him. Despite his old age, his eyes still burned with deep faith and spiritual strength. As he prayed quietly, the windows slammed open and shut violently. The lamps flickered. The atmosphere itself felt unnatural. Kasim Papa slowly lifted his trembling hands toward the heavens. A tear rolled down his face. "My lord," he whispered emotionally, "you are truly capable of all things, the master of miracles." He paused for a moment before continuing. "I once doubted whether the child destined to protect this village would truly be born, but who am I to question the power of the Almighty?" Another tear fell from his eyes. "Tonight, he is coming into this world, the Gharibologist, a defender of the poor, a protector of justice, a man with a pure heart who will spread love among humanity." And so, on one side, Virji approached Jomvu with his 5 followers, accompanied by an invisible army unseen by human eyes.
On the other side, Qasim Papa prayed joyfully, knowing that somewhere in the village, the long-awaited child was about to be born. If there were people waiting with hope and prayers for the child's arrival, were there others waiting in fear? Others who prayed for the child to never be born? Because whenever light prepares to enter the world, darkness begins to tremble. Far away from the peaceful shores of Mombasa, hidden deep inside an ancient cave surrounded by black rocks and burning torches, shadowy figures stood silently in a circle.
Suddenly, one of the torches exploded violently. The mysterious figure slowly lifted his head. "He is coming," he said in a deep, frightening voice. The others froze. The child of signs, the one spoken of in whispers, the one destined to become the protector of the weak. Another voice spoke nervously from the darkness. "If he rises, our power will end." The hooded figure clenched his fist in rage. "Then he must be destroyed before the world learns his name." At that exact moment, back in the village of Jomvu, the storm suddenly stopped. The violent winds disappeared. Even the ocean itself became silent. Virji stopped walking. Qasim Papa slowly opened his tear-filled eyes. And then, at 4:42 a.m., 18th April 1997, a baby's cry echoed through the night. The sound was soft, but somehow it felt powerful enough to shake both heaven and earth. Virji smiled. Qasim Papa fell into sujood, tears flowing endlessly down his face, and deep inside the dark cave, the hooded figure's eyes widened with fear, because the child they feared most, the Gharibologist, had finally been born.